Making Drupal friendly for editors and clients. This is a topic that means a ton to me, but this presentation has so much to cover that I hope it will be just a high-level look at skills, techniques, modules, and projects that we have found success on this topic. Drupal's extensibility allows you to create just the perfect CMS for your organization. Okay, maybe I'm evangelizing a little. But all too often, that same level of design isn't considered when we're building our editorial interfaces. So I hope that this session leaves you with some ideas for taming content forms, building out useful content dashboards, and enhancing your workflows. My name is Jim Bomero, and I'm a senior engineer at 4 Kitchens. I have over 10 years experience in Drupal, and I use the framework for all my nerdy hobbies. That includes running calculations for brewing beer, planning my retro arcade projects, and teaching kids how to survive the zombie apocalypse at my summer camps in the Philly area. If you have any questions after this presentation, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always excited to talk shop, and I would love to keep this conversation going. I work for 4 Kitchens. We build websites and apps that organize websites and apps for organizations that depend on large-scale or unconventional content. Great. We work with associations, publishers, enterprise organizations, media, and higher ed. Some of our clients include NBC Universal, PRI, Entertainment Weekly, Society of Hospital Medicine, a number of universities, Stanford, Yale, NYU. I spend most of my time with Ithaca College, and we make content go. All right, let's set this up. Personalized experiences. Drupal's extensibility allows us to create that perfect fit for our website. But all too often, the back end is the Wild West from site to site, project to project. And to really start looking at this, if anyone's familiar with this interface, this is WordPress circa 2011. This is when I was doing quite a lot of WordPress at one of my previous jobs at Penn State. Nice interface, and actually comparing that to WordPress in 2014, you'll see it's largely superficial facelift. There was some media enhancements, and certainly a lot changed over those years, but I still see post pages and the media filters and the settings on the left. I see the publishing items and settings on the right. Here's WordPress. I took this snapshot last night. It is a predictable, consistent interface, and while there are enhancements, it's nice for folks that are used to WordPress to be able to walk into any WordPress site and know exactly where content is, how to navigate it, how to extend it to meet their needs. And I've really felt like we've lacked that in Drupal. The strengths that make Drupal flexible are also a weakness in that it's now the onus is on us to make our sites user-friendly. And so I kind of lead with this idea that sometimes node is a 4-letter word, one of those taboo terms that you'd rather not say in polite company of clients. I love Drupal, and I'm a downright evangelist. I've used that word already. But our clients just want a website that's easy to use. So making Drupal friendly is really checking those words at the door, node, taxonomy, blocks, and all that jargon, and just building intuitive interfaces. I've often found that if I'm using the word node in the description of how to do something, we're too far under the hood. I've already lost the focus of those around me. From a more practical standpoint, they just want to know, can I edit this? And I might know, it's a button. No, you can't. That's in the template. You can't edit that. And so we're given this idea of how do we handle, in this case, non-node items without telling folks that, hey, this is a node. This is what you edit. And so my first piece of advice is just draw straight lines and clean lines over what the limits are of what you can edit as a user. Documentation is key, and providing contextual help when editing documentation is nice. I'll show some examples. And then the other is create processes for feature requests. I have gotten many challenges over content authors because I realized they didn't feel like they were being heard when they said, how do I edit this? Why can't I just edit this as the other popular one? It just works in insert other CMS platform and break my heart. So I don't think Drupal is necessarily hard, but the truth is we have a responsibility to make this stuff easy and friendly. And so also on this personalized experience idea, I'm just going to charge us all to be ambassadors of the brand. It's our responsibility to carry all the beauty that we think of in designs to the back end. And in an increasingly competitive market, we have to make our platform stand out. So embrace your user stories, listen to their hardships, watch their workarounds. I love watching an editor work because I will see them do things I never intended them to do. And then I quickly realize, oh, because you don't know the right way, because I made the right way the wrong way. It's a great learning experience. And really the rest of this slide deck is me sharing user stories that I've seen, some screenshots of how we accomplish them, references to the projects. This is not something that requires programming knowledge, but certainly I will drop some tidbits of code in there for how you can hit the ground running on some of these pieces. So topic number 1, the login experience. And this is the case where user is a 4-letter word. The login screen makes your first impression, so make sure it's a good one. If I have to say to somebody, oh, you log in by just, well, go to your website, then type /user, I've already lost. That is not intuitive. That is not helpful. So my suggestion there is just remove all these small barriers to entry. Create a memorable login link, maybe via redirects. Your site can have /login. That's okay. Heck, you can have WP login if you have people that are just familiar with that. Redirecting to the form. Choose your own adventure, color outside the lines, and feel free to make landing pages that allow people to log in easily. So creating a memorable URL is nice. I also like adding links. And so this is an example of an audience landing page that has a login link. It's very well treated and friendly. And in fact, the button goes away when we're in maintenance mode. Those little touches have gone a long way for our clients. Or if there is perceived maintenance, we've also included that near the login button. Everyone knows to come here. No one knows to go to /user. And actually underneath, one of my favorite features, it's so hard to see from the back, is a link for where to go for help. So that contextual help goes a long way with your editorial audience. They will be less frustrated if they have a venue, if they have an outlet to express their rage. Also on the login front, I would consider finding a form that fits your needs. You might have a single sign-on option available, in which case that's great. I would rather not remember another username and password, and honestly, I don't want to store that for you if I don't have to. But if you are going to have a Drupal login form, the native form may not be what you need. This was a conference I was a part of, and that's just Drupal out-of-the-box boilerplate. So username, enter your site name, username. Not always the best language. Password, enter the password that accompanies your username. Probably didn't need to tell me that. And then these tabs on the top. So everything in Drupal is extensible. This was just a template change. But there are some side projects available to alter your login forms. Too many to name, but you can Google them. There's a ton to open up your login. And finally, my last note on login in this sense is by default, Drupal redirects you to your profile page, and that has never been useful to me. So create a rule, create a redirect. It'll take somebody somewhere, take your audience somewhere useful. It doesn't have to be the same place. It might be an editorial dashboard of content, but as you have different users gain access to your systems, that can change as well. Maybe a manager is only there to see what's recently published, where a content author needs the full-on dashboard. So feel free to change it by roles, by user, but definitely allow them to go somewhere other than the I've been a member of this site for 2 years and 7 months. While that's a great bragging right, maybe we should have a tweet button to post it. It truly adds no value. And it can get very confusing when they just start editing their user account. Also, another note, employ destination parameters and URLs. For most Drupal sites and most parts of it, you could have a destination query parameter at the end of a URL, and it will take somebody after they log into that page. So if you had a landing page or help topics that were saying how to do something on the site, you don't have to tell them, go to the content menu, go to this part. You can get them right to the forms they need. As I started using those, I found that my custom links with the destinations were highly active. Everyone just knew, oh, go to this documentation. That's how you always take on this task. So that comes from your user stories. After login, they're in the site. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Admin theme and the toolbar. The toolbar in core is pretty darn good. I just have the one addition that makes it auto-select. Let's add some other tools. I'm forgetting which one it's called. Is it just called admin toolbar? I don't know. I should have wrote it down on this slide. But admin themes are the other important one. So 7 out of the box is fine, and a lot of themes build on that, including Add Minimal, probably the most popular contrib admin theme. Definitely worth checking out. And 42. 42 I like because in most admin themes, I see a Drupaler who made a great effort at presenting all the things that an editor might need. In 42, they call the designer first. And it actually looks friendly. So bigger buttons, larger targets. Sometimes the interface can be a little overwhelming, but it's a refreshing change from everything that looks like 7. And in the middle there, that's Thunder. If you haven't played around with Thunder, it is a distribution for publishers, but parts of it are so popular they've spun it off into their own themes and module. Thunder Admin has been a lot of fun. It includes a lot of features for organizing paragraphs, things of that nature. Check out Thunder. Third topic, dashboards. And I use this term very generically because it's going to be whatever you want it to be. The dashboards I'm defining as a set of tools and reports that are helpful to your editors. It can be a single page or a collection of resources. So a ton of examples on that front. When logging in, some folks choose to redirect or take their users to the content overview page, admin/content. This page works for any site that uses nodes. And since every site is different, it generically doesn't do much. There's not a ton of value in seeing just a list of nodes in that default view. You could at the very least customize that view and present the fields that matter to you. Maybe author doesn't matter because you have people changing the content constantly. You don't need to know the original author. The original author was an intern you paid to migrate all your content. You don't need to see their face anymore in the view. So one of the very first things I do for every time I add a content type, if there is not a page that makes sense for representing that content type to our editors, I create a new one using just the fields that make sense for this context. So in this case, this is news. I have a tiny thumbnail, 40 by 40, highlighting that the news has an image. That way people don't forget if they were thinking of just having a placeholder. A title linking to it. Status. We use front and sticky on this site, so yes or no to see that. And being able to sort these in operations. This is just a slightly improved version of the content overview page, but it's made for news. And only the folks who are posting news care about it. It's their baby now. As they come up with new features, we can add it here. The last thing I suggest is you create these views and reports. Keep your instructions handy. And maybe most importantly, don't write them yourselves. Have the folks that are using these content types write the instructions in the language that they're familiar with. And at the very least, you can close the loop if there's been any confusion on how Drupal works. I have a bunch of dashboards, so hold on. It's going to get good. Prioritize tasks. This is an example of a single-page dashboard where the site owners wanted some of the content types to be very visible. So depending on who you are, these widgets areas are going to pop in and out based on your role. We wanted to just make them pretty at that time. This was a few years ago. So icons showing the different content types you can add. For them, they were very paranoid on what content was released to the world. So seeing the most recently published posts and then also having a view counter to know that it's actually getting traffic was important. So this is the first page you come to. But we customized this dashboard per user per role. Whew, some alliteration. Another example of a dashboard, I run summer camps in the Philadelphia area, outdoor adventures. And so we see Jesse here is running our wilderness survival, our zombie survival, and our nature superheroes camp. Our camp counselors, when they come in, they're interested in when are they working and where and how much are they getting paid and when. So while it's cut off the screen, there's schedule services at the top using contextual filters. So just events that they are tagged in appear. And then a second view appears below of just timesheets and their approval status. And if there were any follow-up questions. Their personal information is important because my summer camp folks move around a lot and I need to know where to send their paychecks. So I made sure to have a big button on there to edit their profile, but I got rid of the standard user one. So this is a custom page. Just an example of filtering content. Another example in that vein is commonly referenced datasets. So this is where you need to start interviewing your content stakeholders and find out what they're doing all the time. And if the answer is, well, I go to this content page, I copy everything out, I put it in Excel, and then I start sorting it, there's a huge time savings by you just generating this view, either with Drupal views or with a custom database query. So this is an example of a web conference site I worked on where as people submitted ideas of what they wanted to speak on, there was a team just rating them. We can see a comment count and the aggregate stars, and then if you voted on them or not. Those were the most common tasks when submissions were coming in, so there's a single dashboard just for that. There was another dashboard for planning time slots. That's a different one. We don't need one dashboard to rule them all. Using views, you have access to expose filters and arguments. So sort and parse your views. This was a ticketing system we helped create. And so folks were constantly looking, did I have anything assigned to me? Was that ticket closed? Things would come in so fast that sorting was an important part of that. For this one, using views bulk operations, this was actually a Drupal 7 site. There are several projects that work in this way, where there's a checkbox next to your content listing, and then you can take action. In fact, I recommend just using actions as defined as a plugin in Drupal. It's a super easy programming task to take on if you're new to plugins. And you can just say for each entity, do this action. So I'll go through some examples in a later slide, but updating fields all at once, changing the status in a bulk way for content, refreshing content. Sometimes you just need that automatically save button to perform different tasks in your third-party integration. But either way, the ability to check multiple things and click a button, in this case it was just update approval because we were accepting or rejecting sessions that were speaking, was a sincere win. And I think I have a couple more examples of that coming up. Using cloning tools. There's actually a lot of ways to do this in core code now. It was always node clone back in the day. Now there's an ND clone project. There's also some other ones that will duplicate content and pre-fill that form with the data from your previous one. So in my case, when I'm coming up on summer camp season and I need to add 30 zombie survivor camps, I don't want to fill out the details over and over again. I hit clone, I change the date and location. I hit clone, I change the date and location. Wonderful tool. Can save you a lot of time and has really matured over the years. I used to be hesitant. I fully embrace it now. Integrating draggable interfaces. So there are a few tools. Waits is the one that I've used most often, or just Wait is the name of the project. In this case, editors needed access to change the order that links were appearing in the menu, but Drupal's menu system does not have that level of granular permissions. So we created views of the links as they would appear in the menu, gave them the ability to change it here. The Wait is saved in a separate database table. No one needs to know that. The point is, we didn't give them permission to edit the menu, but we gave them the ability to edit a Wait associated with each menu link. It's magic. It's all under the hood. So Wait has some great purposes. It's pretty abstract, but anytime you need to reorganize content, you automatically get the little drag and drop handlebars on the left just by building a view. Views, entity form fields, and toggle editable fields are great time savers for redundant tasks. So this is I believe this is a board of trustees with bio content information, the executives. They had annual elections and appointments, and people just changed often. So to be able to update all the contact information for multiple nodes at once in the context of a view has been wonderful. When I was in higher education, programs annually had cost change, maybe course change requirements, and someone was going through and editing 180 program nodes twice a year, actually, each semester to make sure all the content was up to date. For us to be able to give them just a view of the program name and the field they wanted to edit all at once, and they can do it on one interface, was a true time-saving miracle to them. It was actually very little work for me because we were using native views with a custom plugin. And then to conclude the dashboard section, I showed a lot of examples, but these are ones that I've built in the last 2 years. So just looking at recent projects, what are the things your users are asking, or what are they doing when they first log into the site? And I won't go over all of them, but maybe on this page, the ones that were most fun. What page was I editing yesterday? That is one of the most genuine concerns I get. So let's not hide that. Let's give that information right up front. For which projects have a header image? For our search engine marketing folks, they are constantly finding content that doesn't have all the properties set. So a report that shows your content and what's available or what's missing can be a lifesaver to just that group. Not everyone may need that view. And what are the meta tags for each landing page? So another one for our search engine group. To be able to see a report of all your content, but only a couple of fields on it, is an easy win. It takes very little work for you to create a new view for a role. These I'll go through a little slower because I'm very proud of a lot of these. For accessibility, being able to do audits through views is super easy and hopefully cuts down on people having to get chased down to update their content. So if we were able to create a view of all the most recently created content that had images through an image paragraph with the alt text associated with it, we now have the way to spot check things maybe on a weekly basis without having to run a full detail report and manually check. We know that if it was updated, it came across this report. So we use views a lot just for persons that are in charge of that accessibility accountability outside of an automated workflow. The ability to export things, there's a lot of great modules, so keep that in mind. I don't know how many times I've later found out people were copying things out of views, putting them in Excel and manipulating it there. Well, I'll at least generate you a CSV, and you don't have to worry about special characters and stripping out links and all that kind of thing. Performance, which pages have the most traffic. Stale content was a very fun project. I was with a financial firm that had a liability associated with some of their services. They needed to have rates up to date. And so at least once a year, they wanted to edit the products and make sure that the financial rate was correct. And so it was just a view that showed content that was over a year old for that content type. And they had to edit it, make a superficial change, click save for it to go away, but it gave them peace of mind. It accomplished a real business need. Announcements, support, where do I go for help? On all these reports, I put information on how to use it and how to contact help. You can even put a form. So we have one that submits Jira tickets right from the homepage of when you logged into Drupal. Why not? What's nice about that is we have hidden fields that say like what your session was, who you are, what browser you're using. So it helped us with the debugging too. And the last one, I'm here to actually ask you the question because I don't know how to do this yet. Folks log in and they just want to see a list of my content. I don't know what that means. I have tried to define what my content means. Is it the content you were originally author, the content that you have revisioned most recently, or ever revised it? Is it content that you're in the same group as? So I don't have a good answer for that one, and we end up turning on the Firehose a lot in Drupal because we can't adequately say, well, this is technically your content. Whew, that was Act 1. Are we all with me? Let's see, checking the time. I have a lot more slides than I should, but if you do have any questions and such, feel free to flag me down because I am doing the sort of BuzzFeed roundup of 200 awesome ideas to try on your site, and hopefully some of them resonate with you. Field types, field widgets, field formatters. This is really about using the right tool for the job. So when you add a new field to Drupal, you have some options. I want a Boolean, date, link, number, options, references. You want to use the right tool for the job, and all too often, I see the case where everything's a text field. This was a problem a lot back in the day. It's still a problem, where I see generic text fields. So a phone number field, do I need an area code? Do I allow special characters? A link field, is it absolute relative? Oh, Twitter gets on my nerves so much. And I've seen it recently where everyone's Twitter links were broken because some people assumed it was just @ in the username, some people assumed it was the username, some people assumed it was the whole link. How about we just take out the assumptions? So get the right links for the right job, and there is a module in Drupal for a lot of those third-party link fields, a Twitter link, a Facebook link, or you can just create your own validator pretty easily. Price. Oh, that's another one that gets on my nerves. If you're ever on a shopping cart and there's no currency symbol, and you're like, I assume this is US dollars, but I don't really know. I was buying something for my Raspberry Pi, and I really wasn't sure because it wasn't coming from the United States. Birthday, that field, using date formats. I'm not going to say all the calendaring widgets are great, but at least for data storage sense, we need things stored in a consistent way. Otherwise, when you interpret a raw text value and it's 04-05, I don't know if that's May or April. And then finally, address. Here's a field. You figure it out. There are so many ways to store address information, and the Commerce guys have the addressing module. Highly recommend it. There's also a couple of wins that we see often on the front end, and we can pull into the back end. By using field types that have the HTML5 markup, your native browser could start to change its keyboard, change its validation on the client side. So you get the phone number pop up with the 1 through 90 keypad, rather than just getting a plain text field with an alphabetical keyboard that you need to switch. Similarly with email and date, there are native browser support definitely on mobile devices and coming to devices in general that are going to do the work for you. We use them on the front of our websites. Let's try to use it more on the back end too. Linkit. Does anyone use Linkit? I'm curious. I love Linkit. So I don't have to talk about it too much, but I didn't see anyone groan when I said it. It is my go-to solution for one problem in particular. When you have a reoccurring content title and something called like Best in U.S. World News Reports, and it's a press release that comes out every year, and you're on or every 6 months, and you have so many instances of this in your database that when you start filling out an autocomplete field and you're looking at best of, and it's just the whole list is the exact same title. And you start having to train people. Well, the new one you created has a node ID. Go edit it, look at the node ID, and now in the autocomplete field, type in the number, and then you'll see, no, that's too much work. Linkit allows you to create teaser views and expose more of the data to sets of filters. So in this case, we're seeing title, node ID, and the page type. But sky's the limit on this. You can create full-on teasers using Linkit. It's also useful for creating external links. So wonderful project to just kind of set and benefit from. And there's a lot of other widgets like that. The one on the right is my favorite. This is the Chosen.js library, turning your select lists into, there's actually many different variations. In this one, it's searchable. There's a tagged view. There's a multi-select combo box kind of field. There is, I'll just list some of these Drupal names off, the project names. Slider field, select or other. Oh, that's a fun one to implement. Multi-select and a selector element, I think, is the one all the way on the left. I like the quote from Luke in the UX world that drop-downs should be the UI of last resort. And generally, I do agree. When you have a page, especially on mobile, and you're tapping, just to select one value in a drop-down is 3 taps. I'm not saying this is definitely easier, but right tool for the job. Figure it out.
What was that tool again?
This one is Chosen.
Chosen. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Field types, widgets, and formatters. Computed fields. Computed fields are not the only way to accomplish this task, but it's the only easy way I know that requires the least amount of changes to your code. So this does require some technical know-how, and it is a little confusing, but it allows you to find fields that are based, that values are based on other fields. So in this case, this is my timesheet for summer camp. Our workers are adding the hours they worked that day and their total mileage for that day, and the computed fields appear above. Now, I could just compute these on the fly in a template, but I want reports where I can query and search. I want to do a view on your total hours per employee. And so to me, that says, well, that's an actual data element. It should have a field. It's going to be sortable. We're going to parse that information later. So these computed fields are never shown to the user in the edit form, but they do appear in our other representations. It takes some work. There's a bit of a learning curve, but it's a wonderful project. And on to the next act, enhancing forms. So let's assume your users are logged in. They have that wonderful new admin theme. They're on their dashboard, and they're going to edit some content that they found. And luckily, you've made the content with all the wonderful widgets and field formatters. Wow, we covered a lot. Let's look at how we can make the node forms or any entity edit form, or even config form for that matter, more useful to our users. This is something I've been preaching for a while. A great architecture is meaningless if the client can't use it. And so how do we tame these forms? For years, my favorite part of Drupal is extensibility. And I just did a topic on creating custom entities. I like being able to add fields in the fields I want to make this form unique. But now the ownership's on you to make the form useful. And so this is an example of a news item that has just all the fields dumped to the screen. We see a couple of image types with descriptions that kind of take over. The WYSIWYG at the bottom, the published dates in a field set. Display on homepage almost looks like it's a weird property that's outside of other things. It's tough to get a sense of how someone's supposed to complete this form and if they should complete all the items on this form. So a couple of techniques on how to approach this for enhancing forms. Let's start at the top. Top of the page has a title. Most of the time, it's going to follow a create and then the type of node that you have. We're talking about node forms. And not always is that a useful bit of language. So for that web conference site, it said create session. And anonymous users can say they wanted to speak on a topic. And we changed that to submit a proposal, because that was language that was in the context of the content type. And just some other examples. If you had an application content type, you can change that to join our team. For a timesheet, track your time. Or for an alert, create alert. That's a little alarming, but set a campus alert message, I think, communicates that value that much more. We see a similar thing at the very bottom of the form and other parts of the interface with action buttons. A lot of action buttons just say save. Some might say publish, depending on where you're at in the interface. So being able to change the language of that is very useful. There are modules that do this, or it's a very easy task to accomplish through custom code. I'll probably share some on our blog at some point. But submit a proposal, add position to job board, post to newsfeed, just trying to provide some contextual value around that part of the form. The form itself, we saw an example of one that was very lengthy. And my go-to mechanism for at least reducing the footprint of the elements on the page is field groups. There's several variations of this, but the field group module allows you to create, in this case, vertical tabs on the left. There's horizontal ones. There's collapsible divs that expand and collapse. There's an accordion set. And for this form, this is related to an event in our summer camp area. I have people in different roles working on this form. If you are me, I am coordinating events, and I am plugging in the logistics, the where, the when, the description of the event, its visibility. This first tab is just for me, really. And outside of a couple of properties and registration, this is the only one that has to get filled out to be useful to our site. Marketing details, that is somebody else on my team who's really good, does our social media. All their fields are behind its own tab. We don't have to worry about each other's work. Similarly with registration, I can't always open all that details. I can't open up all those details right away. So we have that in its own space. And then staffing. I have someone in charge of scheduling our workers. And everything she needs as our camp coordinator is in that tab. So we've taken a long form, and in this case, just broke it into 4 different forms, but organized based on the needs of our user. So that's been useful. On a lot of pages, I'll even have properties that just don't need to be set more than once. They're there maybe for the future, but we don't need to show everybody every field every time. If you're always editing the same field, that's the only one that needs to be visible. In the same regard, in Drupal, you can create custom forms. So you do not need to have one edit form for every content type. You can have multiple. It's a little bit more of a project to take on, but keep it in mind. The case there would be if you want different people in your roles to have access to different fields and just hide the other ones. You don't have to do it through access. You can actually do it through the form itself. Enhancing fields, this is just another example of where I'm using tabs to organize it. This is for an academic program at a university where the different parts of the program, different properties are organized through these tabs. And it gets confusing on what we mean by a degree audit or a course check sheet. So for each one of these, we have some lengthy instructions, and the content stakeholders were the ones who wrote those instructions. That was an important part for us. Using permissions is another way to keep things at bay. I will generally create separate forms if I want you to have access to only parts of the site, but permissions is another way to do it. I'm hesitant on permissions because it does have a performance issue on your site. You can slow down your site by using field permissions incorrectly. Or, I shouldn't say incorrectly, it's just buyer beware. Here's a good example one, though, of when somebody submits, what is this? This is their timesheet. There's a pay rate field. People can't decide how much they make, so they could view what their pay rate is, but they're not allowed to edit their pay rate. And our admins can edit it. Our staff, actually, I guess that's the only options I have there. But being able to segment the roles per field, who can edit and access it. There's also a visibility component, too, you can enforce. Helps tame the forms. Client-side validation is a module that I like for inline error handling, but there's also just a number of JavaScript components, especially as we're getting more into component-driven development on front ends of projects. We can bring that logic to our back end. And so using JavaScript and even asynchronously back-end logic, we could start validating fields while it's in the browser. You don't have to wait for someone to hit the submit button. On a form like this, we've had problems where when you hit submit, the offending pages might be on multiple tabs, so you don't have the lovely regard of the whole field turning red and being able to see it because it's hidden behind the field groups. So being able to say in real time, as you tab off a field, this value is incorrect, has a huge benefit. And this is one I'm actually most proud of. As far as adding instructions, we created a color scheme picker for a paragraph in Drupal. And this was when I was working at Penn State. We named all the color schemes after flavors of creamery ice cream. So we see alumni swirl. And we gave a description in the label for the field, bright blue with gold buttons. But what was more important were these swatches, which were defined in the component library. So we were actually giving them a preview of what that color scheme might look like. And as we add new ones, especially since we named them after creamery ice cream, we could convey some meaning beyond just a few words in the description. I've certainly been in the case where you have a checkbox or a radio button that's blue button, dark blue button, darker blue button, and then at some point blue button is actually the gold button, so you start changing names and values. Here we can take the guesswork out. You're showing exactly what it is. And this was just attaching some JavaScript to the form. Another pet peeve of mine, redirecting a user after submission. What happens when you submit a piece of content? Depends, but for the most part, the default behavior for a node is you view the content. I edit node 2. When I click save, I'm viewing node 2. Maybe your workflow takes you to a workflow page or a revision detail page, depends on where you're at. I don't know, though, that's the best place. Depends on your needs. So in this case of submitting something for the web conference, this was a job application, you don't get to view your own content. You can submit a session, you don't get to view it. You don't have that permission, at least how we set it up. So you're redirected to a thank you page. That seems like a very practical case. But for another one, our help desk staff, there's a web form for another client where users submit if they had a problem. Some come through the phone call system. And so the help desk person is manually entering that information. We don't need to take them to a thank you page. We take them to the add another ticket page. So every time they click save, it creates a new one. So just be thoughtful on what happens after you complete a form, and it will hopefully help capture that journey of what tasks they were trying to complete. And I would say this is probably one of my favorites of the recent additions we made on our website. I love paragraphs. We're big on component-driven design at 4 Kitchens, and we use Emulsify with Pattern Lab to build our themes. And so we have a lot of paragraphs. That's how we map everything together for most projects. And the paragraphs kind of dump a lot onto the screen. So in this case, we see an image card collection, an image with the text below it, and it takes over. Our paragraphs have such a large footprint that it's almost impossible to drag and drop them between parts of the site. So we are now in the habit of creating view modes for each of these paragraphs, a preview mode. And so in the paragraphs interface, don't show me a dump of all the content, show me the preview or the teaser of that content. And so you see, in most cases, you see that the footprint became much smaller using a thumbnail version of the image and hopefully a curated and organized view of what content's associated with that paragraph. In a few of them, we've actually added information, but we've added visual breaks. So you can see the groupings if there was 1 or 2 cards in this collection. Those little bits of just CSS have gone a long way. All right. Okay, just making sure we're on the right spot. So I was going to say, in an increasingly competitive market, there are high expectations on our community. And I want to encourage you to embrace those user stories. Start asking about what your users' workarounds are and document them, and then share them with the community. That's going to be probably my biggest takeaway here is we're all in this together. I've seen so much frustration on, I can't stand Drupal, it's hard to use. And I think it's self-imposed. The folks who have designed a lot of these interfaces are not interface designers. And it's going to take a collection of all of us to bring that feedback to the community and grow these. I powered through those, so thank you very much. This is my second session today, and I guess I was on a roll. But I did go through a lot of those slides very fast. So do you have any questions on things we talked about? Or I'm curious what your woes are as well, because share it with the community for sure. Yes, sir?
Just from your opinion, when do you decide something's best for Drupal or WordPress?
That is tough, because I work in Drupal so often that it's my default mode. And so I try not to make those decisions in a box. I try to bring other folks in. And when we're doing a discovery phase, I look at the content model, and that will usually dictate one or the other if it's between Drupal and WordPress. As soon as we get into a realm of customizing entities, especially the beyond the superficial visual presence. So when a node has properties that start integrating with other parts of the site configuration, you check a box, and now a microsite exists. That is the type of custom logic that I always go for Drupal 100% of the time. But if it's just a content interface that you put content in and it displays it, I think Drupal or WordPress can do a fine job, and there's a lot of other factors to take on. We try not to make the decision too fast because it usually comes from a bad place. It's just personal opinion.
Have you ever used like an e-commerce thing for Drupal?
Sure. In fact, I would say we recommend it. At Four Kitchens, there's a lot of projects we take on that we love to. When it's e-commerce, we recommend other tools often. I mean, there's some great Drupal commerce tools if your clients are in a position to manage them. But if they're not, a third-party shop might be all they can afford to invest their time in. So I've seen us, especially for organizations that are fundraising or doing donations that don't need a full e-commerce solution, we'll gladly go to a cloud-hosted solution any day of the week. It's just a lot of overhead for someone to take on. So it's more for their protection. Any other questions? Sir?
So with paragraphs being like this level of component-driven design and kind of form building on the back end, like any other takeaways besides like the few little things you did there? Because like you will ultimately get this doesn't look like what I'm going to get, right? Mm-hmm. And so like how do you fight against that frustration of the content creators of those previews not being the reality of what they're going to see?
I've handled it two ways. And I actually cut a slide in this area on previews. So I always disable the preview mode for content types because it's usually an unfair representation of the content. Even if you have the styles down 100%, there are other things that make a page that are not the node itself. So the sidebars might have contextual information that appears that's not going to appear on a preview. It gets even worse with paragraphs because you are probably looking at content that's not intended to be looked at a full screen. And for a lot of this, honestly, if I see a business case to make a custom entity, I will. And I will turn off the ability to view it on its own or view it outside the context that it should be. When you're adding a paragraph to a page, my default approach has been to not let it look like the thing it's supposed to. So in my paragraph slide, this is not at all what it looks like. It's going to come across, in this case, probably 3 stacked cards, although one of the properties is color scheme, I think, on one of these. If not, it's off the screen. We're not showing it. So choosing not to render it has actually been a bigger win. And hopefully with some of the newer JavaScript frameworks that are coming up and headless sites where you're thinking of your content outside of the CMS anyways, people will just become attuned to it. I worry that if you give them any sense of a preview, it's just going to be wrong. So maybe don't. Sure.
I notice with a good bit of your custom administrative interfaces, like your dashboards and stuff, many of those are laid out horizontally and sort of assume a desktop display. Do you worry that that's going to cause accessibility problems for your site? I mean, what if you have a site editor who has accessibility limitations?
I'm feeling fairly confident in Drupal because...
What about the case when people start editing sites on mobile devices?
Sure. I've been there. Quick fixes, especially. I remember being on a camping trip and something was down and I was in the middle of the woods editing Drupal on my phone. It wasn't fun. This was years ago. I mean, it was fun in the way that like my heart was pumping. I worry actually very little bit about accessibility from the admin interface as far as structural components. So things like those tables. Drupal 8 has done an amazing job of making sure that their default markup is accessible. So what you put in it is probably more of a barrier than the structure of, say, those tables. On a bigger note, though, we are making tables in those, and not all data is tabular. So you do need to be careful with how you present information, and rows and columns may not be easy to navigate. I've seen many reports like this that just have too much information, and it's not usable. We've used a few projects over the years, and I'm not a front-end designer, so I don't remember any of the JavaScript libraries, but there's a few that make tables natively responsive, or just automatically responsive. They have been wonderfully helpful that a well-made semantic HTML table can become something with tap targets, and the columns realign into vertical slices, maybe expanding when you click on them. And that's the only technique I have right now to keep all that data on the screen and make it useful is these third-party libraries that are turning your data table into something that fits on the phone. I wish I had a better way. The Drupal admin interface in general is probably not very mobile friendly as far as a small screen goes. I think it's more about screen real estate than anything else. I also love the 42 admin theme because I have tap targets that I can actually hit, as opposed to a lot of the action buttons that you see of themes based on 7, where just good luck. It's almost impossible, and before you know it, you've clicked edit instead of view. So I danced around it, but that's everything on my mind.
Instead of edit.
I'm feeling pretty good, except on accessibility, though. I've been very happy. It's been more of a challenge working with accessibility issues on front-end templates than back-end tools.
Okay.
And we certainly have to worry about that since we have a lot of higher ed clients. It's part of our purview of what we're working on.
I was wondering, do you have any advice how to allow your content editors to update an existing page but publish it at a later time without having to take down the original?
Oh, sure. Are you already using a workflow that has multiple revisions?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, then no. So I would not trade into that lightly. Workflows could really just add so many headaches to your site. But when they exist, there are several scheduler modules that will publish a piece of content on a date or unpublish it on a certain
Yeah, I
date.
use Scheduler
Okay.
to take the whole existing page offline.
Right.
And then it's no longer there, and then they just want to, put a new revision up. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have that. So much of that is based on So much of it is based on content existing on a single canonical route that I don't know an easy way to make that transition. Outside of if you started setting up more dynamic page views. So I'm thinking of some of the modern JavaScript frameworks have a route, but the content is populated through some back-end means. So you could have an About Us page, and that page is based on properties of other content. You could have pages automatically published. Whichever one is published last flows at the top of the queue, and that's the contents of the page. That's a clever workaround, and maybe there's a module that does it, but unfortunately, outside of a revisioning workflow system, I have nothing.
You set the workflow from the beginning before you even start returning?
I usually push it off till later. Workflows have to be dictated by the content in them, and I've jumped the gun on projects in the past where we thought it was a simple workflow that had a new content, pending review, published. But as we got in the weeds and we found out, oh, this team has a visual owner, something like their print shop that needs to sign off on it, and now the workflow became more complicated, we found ourselves refactoring it later. So I wait till the end. Anything else? One other thing on paragraphs, I was thinking about what you had mentioned. I haven't a great solution for this, but I have a lot of sites where there are too many paragraphs to be useful. You click the drop down and it goes off screen and you end up scrolling to them. So we have recently started nesting paragraphs where it makes sense. So in the case of social media embed, and we have a paragraph for a Facebook article, a paragraph for a tweet. Those are all child bundles of a social media paragraph. So at least when you're on the content edit form, you say add new social media, and you're presented with a form of, now I pick which social network I want. It is a chore to maintain that relationship, but it's been useful for us. All right, well, thank you so much. I'm sorry I went so fast, but it's been wonderful being a part of your day, and feel free to reach out to me if you want to talk about any of these things.